Hello everybody, welcome to this video, Jersey Shore Pondscapes videos. Today we're going to be looking at seasonal care. This is my fourth video in this series out of four. Today we're talking about winter. Alright, so we've done spring, summer, fall, and now we're at winter. Okay, so winter's a really crucial time for our ponds. It's very stressful for the fish. Okay, the water temperature gets colder and colder and colder, and the fish's metabolism slows down considerably. At this time, we're going to stop our feeding. Okay, we're not going to be feeding our fish through the winter. Even if we get a warm day and you see your fish moving around a little bit, and you say, "Oh, my fish are swimming around. They might want some food." No, okay, they don't need it. It's going to get cold again. The water's really freezing, okay? How the fish stay in that pond over the winter, I have no idea, because man, you stick your hand in that water for 5 seconds and pull it out and it's pink. You know, with all the ice, I'm glad I'm not a fish. But anyway, yeah, so winter is quite stressful on the fish, and especially because we're going to have fluctuations in temperature. Okay, you know, one day, you know, we could have a night where it's, you know, 10 degrees, and then 2 days later we can have a day that's, you know, 45, 50 degrees. So there's a lot of fluctuations in temperature. Our ponds get covered with ice. Okay, it's rough. All right. When the fish's metabolism slows down, so does their immune system. So they do become more prone to parasites, bacteria, and funguses through the winter. All right, so that's definitely something we have to be aware of. And especially come spring, we need to really observe and look at our fish and make sure that everything is happy and healthy and we don't have any major issues going on. But let's talk about fall and closing down our ponds, you know, as winter begins. Okay, so for me, I typically run my ponds up until November. So November for me is my pond closing month. I don't want to be building ponds. I don't want any installs. I don't want any big jobs. November for me is nothing but closings. Okay, and I want to say from November 1st all the way until Christmas, I'm closing ponds. I have a whole mess of them to close. Now, some people leave their ponds open through the winter and running. I close them all down. I'll tell you my theories on this and why I think it's much better to close ponds down rather than leave them running all winter. Okay, number one, I don't want any problems when it's 20 degrees outside, there's a foot of snow on the ground, all right, and there's potential for pipes to break, right, UV lights to break, pumps to freeze up, ponds to leak, because the water coming down the waterfalls is all a sheet of ice. And as more and more water comes down the ice expands until it could get to a point where the ice goes outside your pond. Now the water is hitting all that ice and being diverted outside the pond. I've seen ponds drain in the wintertime because all the water is going out the sides of the waterfall down the ice. Okay, now I don't want to be out in the middle of the snow in the winter time when it's 20 degrees and the wind chills are 0 and have to run to your house because you've got an emergency. There's no water in your pond, or your pipes are froze up and your pump's not working anymore. And what do you do? What do you do? Well, what am I going to do? Your water's turned off outside. All your hoses are frozen. Right? There's a foot of snow on the ground. I can barely see your pond. It's covered with ice and snow, right? And you've got all these problems, right? What are we going to do? So if something does happen in the winter, it's really hard to fix it. Okay. Leaving UV lights outside in the winter. Okay. Well, one, it's a plastic tube. Okay. Two, there's a quartz sleeve inside that with a glass bulb. Okay. And if this stuff freezes in the ice and it cracks and breaks, all right, it's not only going to possibly crack the housing of the unit, it could break the quartz sleeve, okay, which means that the water now can get to the bulb, which can get to the electronics, right, the electric connectors on the bulb, and the waters can run through the wire into the ballast of the UV. So basically the whole UV shot. And they're not cheap. They're not cheap to replace. Okay? If you have the ability to remove that UV light for the winter time and maybe put a bypass pipe in or something like that, that's great. More power to you. All right? I don't want any pipes frozen, broken, underground, behind a waterfall, under rocks in a waterfall, pumps freezing up. Okay? The pump traps get all caked with ice and the impellers get iced up. It's just not worth it. All right? There's too much that can go wrong. Now, my other big argument is when you're running your pond through the winter and you're circulating all this water, you're actually making the water a lot colder than it normally would be if it just sat, pretty much, for the winter, if it wasn't being circulated. Okay? The ground insulates the pond. The dirt and the ground under your liner, especially the deeper you go, is not frozen. That dirt is actually warmer than the air above your pond. Okay? If the temperature one night is 20 degrees, okay, you've got 20-degree air on top of your water, cooling it, right? You're going to get ice forming on top of your pond because it's cold. But as you go deeper, the ground is warmer underneath. That's why your fish lay on the bottom and the ice forms on the top. All right? Now, by circulating that water through pumps down the waterfall, you're taking that warmer water on the bottom and you're circulating it, exposing it to colder temperatures. So your pond is going to be colder and it's going to freeze thicker in the winter if you're running it. All right? Now, it's going to be more stressful on the fish. All right? The water's a lot colder. All right. For me, I shut my ponds down. So again, November, early December, we're shutting our ponds down. So what does that mean? I go to the house, I clean the filters, all right. I drain the filters, I disconnect the UV lights, I disconnect the pumps, and I blow out all the pipes. So there's no water left in any of the pipes. Okay, and I blow the pipes out. Basically, I have a big wet dry shop vac, and it has a suction on one end, and it has an exhaust, a blower out the other that you can connect the hose to. And I connect the hose to that blower and hold it on the pipes and blow out all that water. I blow out all those pipes. It's really easy. I don't need all big compressors and all this stuff like that. Usually the shop vac will do a really nice job blowing out all the pipes. Okay, ball valves in PVC pipes. If there's water in those pipes over the winter, those ball valves can break easy. All right. Any elbows, right? If you have a pipe with a 90-degree elbow on it, when that water sits in that elbow, it's going to blow out that elbow. Okay. Yeah. Shut the ponds down in the wintertime. Once my ponds are shut down, I can sleep all winter and I can rest easy knowing that I'm not going to have any big emergencies if we have a polar vortex. Okay? Everything is set. Now, I keep aeration in the pond. I do have an air pump with air stones in every one of my ponds. Now, in the summer, if I'm running those air stones in my pond, I'm putting the air stone down on the bottom. All right, whether it's coming from a lid of a bottom drain. Some bottom drains have air diffusers on them. I don't use them because I don't want to run that in the winter. Okay, and I'm going to explain why. I just set my own separate air stones in the bottom of the pond for the summer. And in the fall, when I close these ponds down, I take those air stones and I pull them up and I keep them up closer to the surface. Maybe a foot down or so, or a foot and a half down on a shelf, or something up higher. All right, and on the side. So rather than in the middle of the pond at the very deepest point, like in the summer, okay, I'm bringing them up on the side and on a shelf for the winter. Now, cold water holds a lot more oxygen than hot water does. All right, so while we need aeration in the winter, we don't need as much. So we can just put those air stones on the side and it will aerate the pond, but without circulating all that water from the bottom of the pond up to the surface constantly. Okay, we're just going to be circulating water on the sides and on the top, but eventually it does mix. But we are putting oxygen into our ponds. Now, between air stones and a heater, okay, I recommend heaters for the winter, but I don't tell you it's 100% necessary. Most of my clients have heaters, but a lot of them do not. So that air stone will produce a boil on the surface of the water, okay, as it's aerating, it's producing that boil on the surface. That boil will keep a hole open in your ice for, 75% of the winter. Only during real extremes will the ice actually creep up and form a dome over the top of that boil and seal it up. At that point, when that ice is starting to seal up my hole, if I have a heater, I can float the heater near that boil, near that air system, plug in my heater, and it'll open up everything all around it. Okay? So for that, they're really good. Heaters can draw a lot more power than the air pump will, so I don't leave them on all winter. Now, a lot of heaters say, there's a thermostat on it, it'll only come on when the water's cold. Yeah. Well, I guarantee you, it's on all winter. The water's cold. All right? It might not be ice around it, but that water's still cold. So, heaters draw a lot of power. And if we don't need them, why run it? Okay? The air stones are the most important thing to keep air in a pond and keep that hole open through the winter. But the heater will just assist during real extremes. So just plug them in when you need them, unplug them when we don't. Now, some of my clients don't have heaters. And the ice can come and form a dome over the top of that boil of my air stones. It's fine. As long as there's oxygen in the pond, all right, those air stones, keep working. As long as they're working underneath that ice, we're good to go. All right. Now, the purpose of a heater is not to heat your water. Okay, we don't want to heat the pond like per se, to 65 degrees. That's not going to happen. The purpose of a heater is simply to keep a hole open so we can have an air and gas exchange. Okay, as any sediment is rotting in the bottom of the pond, any kind of dirt, debris, leaves, plant matter, fish waste, whatever's in the bottom of your pond, as that's rotting and decaying, they give off gases. So if those gases can't escape through the ice, it causes the water to become toxic, right? All those gases and pollutants are building up under your ice in the pond. So it can actually kind of like poison the fish and kill the fish in the winter, all right? So a heater's purpose is to keep that hole open so that gases can escape, all right? Now, keeping your air stones going, do the same thing. It keeps that hole open and it keeps the air moving, the toxins in the water, the gases moving and escaping. So that's our most important critical thing for the winter, to keep those air stones going, okay, and keep that hole open in the ice. Now, if your pond freezes solid with ice, what we don't want to do is go out there with a hammer and start banging on the ice to break the ice, okay? That is not a good idea, all right? That can kill your fish as well. So what happens is, picture this. You're a fish. It's freezing cold. Your metabolism is slowing down. You're barely functioning. You're just kind of laying on the bottom of the pond. Everything is peaceful, quiet. You're relaxed. And then all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang! The shock waves are going through the water as somebody's hitting the ice with a sledgehammer on the top, okay? It's almost like the fish can have like a heart attack, all right? Do not break the ice with a hammer, okay? Sound travels and is amplified greatly in water, okay? So every time you're banging that ice, those shock waves and that sound is just blaring through the water at a time when your fish are almost, sleeping. Okay? Sleeping but not sleeping. Okay? So please do not break the ice with a hammer. I know I've had clients go out there with like a pot of hot water and try to pour hot water on to melt some of the ice. I mean, if you have to, that's probably the better choice than taking a hammer and breaking the ice. But the thing is, if you're frozen solid and you need to get that melted, go buy a heater. Okay? Get a heater. Just put it on top of the ice, on top of the pond, and plug it in, and it will melt its way down through, and it'll open up a hole. All right? So just, don't break the ice with a hammer, okay? All right. So let's move on. Netting, okay? In the fall, we're going to put a net over our ponds to keep the leaves out and keep it clean and keep the debris out of it. I typically like to keep my netting on all winter, all right? Why not? One, it's going to keep your pond clean. It's going to keep your pond safe, right, from predators, from herons, because herons can be a real problem in the winter, even though there's not really as many of them around in the winter, but they are still here, and they're going to be desperate for food because all their natural lakes and ponds and streams are going to be frozen over. And you're going to have this pond with a whole bunch of fish in there with a nice big hole in the ice where they can get at them. And they got to eat, right? They got to eat. It's nature, right? It's survival at this point. So keep our nets on the pond. Let's face it, we're probably not going out to our ponds in the winter as much as we are any other time of the year. In fact, most ponds pretty much get neglected all winter, and only once in a while do we go out and take a look and say, hey, is everything okay? And that's it. All right? So we're not going out there. We're not actively, inspecting it and checking things out all the time. Keep the netting on it. Keep the netting on it over the winter. Snow and ice on the netting, who cares? It's protecting the pond no matter what. It's keeping the herons out. It's keeping the leaves and the debris out. And come springtime, when the weather's nice, we take that netting off and our ponds are just as clean and nice and free of debris and ready to go. Okay, we're ready to start our season and do what we need to now to prepare for the year to come. So keep everything covered up and protected and clean through the winter. Any water plants should all be cut back. Everything. Hardy water lilies, I tend to leave them in the pond because they will grow again. Most of the leaves will survive in the winter, and they will come back and start growing again in the spring. But any tropical plants, cut them up, get rid of them, clean them out, you're done. All right? Blow out all your pipes, you know, shut down your ponds for the winter. It's so much better for the fish, safer for the fish, and a less headache for you if there should be a problem. All right, you're not going to be feeding your fish anymore. You know, it's kind of the end of the year, and everything just needs to just settle down and relax for a couple months. Okay, your fish are fine outside. Goldfish, fantails, golden orphs, koi, shabunkin, all that stuff. They will survive just fine outside. I'm glad I'm not a fish, because that water gets cold, man. But they're fine, okay? So we don't have to heat the ponds. I did have a client years ago that actually had a heat exchanger, a gas heat exchanger hooked up on his filter system, and it actually heated the pond water. I think he probably kept it at like 55 degrees or something all winter long. And his wife would comment about every time she looked out the window and she just saw steam coming up off of the pond over the winter, that, you know, all she saw was dollar signs floating away off the top of the pond. And it's really expensive to try to keep the ponds warm. I have also heard of people doing radiant heat under the ponds. It's just not necessary. The fish going through this little so-called like dormant stage in the winter is natural. It's normal for them. Okay, it helps with their whole reproductive cycle, right? With their spawning in the spring. You know, when they become more active again and the water temperatures warm up, you know. It's just part of their life cycles, and it's natural and normal for them. So there's no need that we need to keep these ponds, you know, really, really warm in the winter, and the fish will be fine. Okay? So I hope that helped you out, give you some things to think about for the winter. You know, there's a lot to, you know, be concerned about and worried about in the winter during the extreme weather. So, you know, by closing down our ponds, putting our pumps, our UV lights away, cleaning our filter tanks, do everything then. It's less we got to worry about all winter. And then come spring, it's all ready to go again, and we're good to start our season. All right, so thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit that like button, and, you know, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. I'm going to be giving you a lot of information and a lot of videos on so many topics. Also, please check out my website, pondscapesandmore.com. I have a ton of pictures of ponds and a lot of descriptions about, you know, the work I've done over the last 25 plus years. So check it out, and thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.